I will always love Star Wars. I first fell in love with the series when I was only 10 years old. But ever since, I was hooked. And before long, I became one of its most dedicated fans. I was taken away to a faraway place where the fantastical became mundane. I found close friends in the characters that inhabited the vast universe, whether they were human, a Wookiee, a Togruta, or a droid. Luke Skywalker became one of my most cherished idols while growing up. His journey as a protagonist and struggles as a character inspired me to be a better person in real life. His triumph over Darth Vader, the Emperor, and the dark side of the Force remains my favorite character journey, bar none. Han Solo and Chewbacca have an unbreakable bond that shows what it means to have lasting friendships and to watch each other's backs when things got tough. Han and Leia's relationship throughout the trilogy was relatable and entertaining to watch, with a wonderful payoff. R2-D2 and C-3PO stand as some of the most entertaining characters in all of cinema. Obviously, I am not alone when I say that Darth Vader is one of the most iconic villains in film. His unmatched brutality as a Dark Lord of the Sith gives a sense of dread that has its own unique flavor on screen. Watching his origin story during the prequels may not have matched the original trilogy in terms of execution, but it still portrays a feeling of fear and lust for power that proves to be his undoing in his youth. This brings things back to Luke's journey, and the lesson it teaches may be one of the most profound themes for all of human history, despite taking place in such a story so far removed from planet Earth. With rare exception, I've watched every movie dozens of times, at the very least. I was happily lost in this universe on a daily basis, and I absorbed its magic in any way I could. For every one of my favorite characters, I have multiple action figures. Every time I saw new figures, toys, or video games that were based on the Star Wars universe, I begged my parents to buy them for me right then and there, or at least settle for a sneak peek at gifts for an upcoming Christmas or birthday. I played pretend with my perpetually growing collection of lightsabers while wearing my own Jedi cloak. Most of the time I would roleplay as my favorite Jedi characters while occasionally crossing over to the dark side as a Sith youth brandishing a red blade. I drew pictures of Luke Skywalker heroically preparing for battle with both his father's blue lightsaber and his own green lightsaber more times than I can remember. Sometimes he would stand alongside his father Anakin, as well as his wife, Mara Jade, his own son, Ben Skywalker, and his niece and nephews, Jaina, Jason, and Anakin Solo. One big, happy Jedi family, accompanied by the usual crew of the Millennium Falcon, of course. In addition to drawing my favorite characters, I would also draw my own original characters based on myself, my sibling, and my closest friends that I made over the years. Call it fan fiction if you will. I was just a kid having fun, and I don't regret letting my imagination run wild with this universe that I love so much. My interests in reading and writing largely had their origins in my admiration for Star Wars, Halo, and other series to a limited extent. Star Wars got me interested in reading books from the expanded universe because, even though Return of the Jedi ended on a very happy note, when I learned that the story continued past the films, I simply had to find out what happened next. Luke's relationship with Mara Jade, the former Emperor's hand, was the most interesting and heartfelt story that I read from the EU. When their marriage came to a tragic end, I was both heartbroken and enraged, and I rooted for Luke when he had to carry on as a single father and raise his son, Ben. His journey from student to teacher and finally Grand Master of the New Jedi Order really contributed to the universe by giving the feeling that the efforts of the Rebel Alliance turned New Republic, and later Galactic Alliance, were rewarded with a sense of justice and liberty returning to the galaxy after the fall of the Empire. There were certainly challenges along the way, including the calculated genius from Grand Admiral Thrawn and the genocidal Yuuzhan Vong War. But these stories featured new and original characters and conflicts that did not feel like retreading old ground. Even the Dark Empire comics were fun to read, and they were about Emperor Palpatine literally coming back to life. There are still stories from the EU that I haven't even read yet, and to this day, I still want to know more. Star Wars was not only responsible for my interest in becoming a reader and writer, the series also gave me my start as an avid gamer for most of my life. My personal favorite Star Wars game is Battlefront 2. The real one. The campaign was both fun and challenging with an entertaining story, and the amount of features and game modes that game contains has gone unparalleled with rare exception, and that game came out in 2005. I was growing up just at the time when the video games industry was going through somewhat of a golden age with Star Wars titles, including iconic games such as Knights of the Old Republic, The Force Unleashed, Jedi Academy, and Republic Commando. Star Wars literally made me a better person. At the time I was really getting into Star Wars, I was having a hard time adjusting to the life of an adolescent boy going to middle school, and this was shortly after I moved away from my best friends and my hometown. The series felt like a natural escape and a home within a home when the rough day at school came to a relieving end. Once I got home and finished my homework, there was a good chance I was doing something related to Star Wars, much to the playful chagrin of my parents. I could have been either watching Return of the Jedi for the 100th time in a month, playing Battlefront 2 on my Xbox, or drawing another picture either depicting official characters, like Luke and Obi-Wan, or inventions of my own in the likeness of either myself or my friends. I had a rough time making friends or socializing during my adolescent years, and I was none too happy about how others around me were acting either with a sense of bravado or some other misplaced sense of invincibility due to the increasing hormonal pressures of teenage life. I had no interest in being one of the cool kids who cut class, did drugs, or otherwise fooled around at a young age where I was not prepared to deal with the consequences. I have my parents to thank for raising me as best they could in a wholesome family environment for the time that they stayed together. But I also have to give credit to George Lucas for teaching me much of the same values through an exciting, adventurous universe he created for people like me. In some cases, I learned more about values of compassion and redemption by watching these films than I ever did in school or church. It was the sense of wonder and the heroic nature of the characters I connected with that really hammered in the values I learned growing up. One of my most cherished values of seeing the good in everyone was taught by my parents and my religion, but it really stuck with me when I first saw Return of the Jedi. Luke brought his own father back from the dark side after refusing to bow to the Emperor's wishes to finish Vader off after defeating him in lightsaber combat. The second most ruthless being in the galaxy, responsible for countless deaths of innocent people and oppression throughout the Empire, was not beyond redemption. And Luke proved it to be true, even when his own mentors urged him to simply kill him instead. That story taught me from a very early age that people I interact with are still human beings, whether they are completely innocent or downright ruthless or apathetic to the world around them. And if there is a chance that I can do something to make them better people, and therefore make the world a better place, I have not only the power, but the responsibility to do so. I understand that it is not the most realistic mindset to have as an adult. Sometimes there are people who cannot be reasoned with, too set in their ways, or are too far gone. But if there is a chance someone needs help, either making themselves better or working to fix something else, and if they want help, I would be happy to help them in any way I can. Sometimes it is utterly heartbreaking when I find myself in a situation where I want to help someone but can't. There are people I know or knew personally who hurt themselves or other people on a regular basis, and I felt terrible that they went without the help they needed because I felt I did not do enough to help them. As a kid, I wanted to be a Jedi for the longest time because I saw them as a force for good, duty-bound to bring peace and justice to the galaxy, whether it was providing aid to individual beings in need, settling provincial disputes, or risking their lives in devastating wars that threaten the stability of entire civilizations. To be a Jedi is to accept a great responsibility. Finding a balance that permits order and harmony to coexist with freedom and enlightenment is no easy task, whether in the world of Star Wars or in the real world. But accomplishing such a task is always satisfying, and it entails a lesson that never gets old. Star Wars will forever be a part of my life, regardless of the state of its reception in the community. I am well aware of how fractured the Star Wars fanbase is at this point in time, with reception to The Rise of Skywalker being lukewarm at best. I wish to do my best to keep this essay on the positive side, but I will take a moment to clear the air on where I stand on this issue. Let me be absolutely clear. I have no qualms against you if you genuinely enjoy The Last Jedi. I have neither the right nor the desire to take that away from you. As for me, what do I think of The Last Jedi? Over the course of only 2 viewings, that film made me less of a Star Wars fan. Let that sink in. I will reiterate that I have rewatched every single episode of Star Wars dozens of times, including both Clone Wars series. I have memorized entire character biographies on Wikipedia and read entire series of novels multiple times. I have collected all forms of products ranging from toys to comics to costumes because I love this universe more than any other crafted by creative human minds. The thrill I got from imagining my own timeline with my own characters and writing intricate plot points and character arcs inspired me to pursue a career in writing with my own original stories. At one point in my life, it was my dream job to work for Lucasfilm and contribute to a galaxy far, far away in a creative fashion. I was inspired to let my imagination run wild and write the most entertaining and meaningful stories I possibly can. Out of all the creative IPs that encourage that mindset in me, Star Wars was the first and greatest influence. I will admit, I was really excited to see more Star Wars, and I was willing to give Disney a chance. I enjoyed The Force Awakens for what it was, and prior to seeing what would follow, I thought it had great potential going forward, even if it made a number of decisions I fundamentally disagreed with. But when The Last Jedi released, and seeing what they did to Luke Skywalker, it could not have come at a worse time in my life. Now, obviously, the decision makers at Lucasfilm bear no responsibility on how my life was going back in 2017. But the character in The Last Jedi was not the Luke Star Wars fans deserved. And in my individual case, it was not the Luke I needed to see. Luke Skywalker ideally embodies hope and perseverance for the Star Wars universe and for his fans in the real world. Which is why, despite my numerous grievances with Disney and with a number of influential figures under their umbrella, I cannot and will not let that film take away the wonderful memories I have growing up and living life as a Star Wars fan. Whether The Rise of Skywalker resumes the course set by Rian Johnson or somehow reunites and restores the faith of the Star Wars fan base, Disney cannot take away my childhood, even if it's as if they feel the need to try for some strange reason. They cannot take away the impact George Lucas's creation has made on my life and my values as a person. The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi are still my favorite films of all time, and I will probably watch them dozens, if not hundreds more times, before I become one with the Force, so to speak. I still have my novels by Timothy Zahn, Aaron Alston, Troy Denning, and countless others. I still have my action figures and my toy lightsabers that remind me there's nothing wrong with having an imagination. I still hope to use my imagination to pursue a creative career, even after all this time. And out of all the stories I have read or watched that influenced my pursuits, I have Star Wars to thank the most. I owe special thanks to George Lucas. Never mind that, I owe very special thanks to George Lucas for proving that dreams can come true, even in the face of impossible odds. And I have Mark Hamill to thank for portraying one of the most important role models in my entire life. And finally, I thank anyone who will take the time to listen to my honest-to-goodness ramblings on topics that I cannot help but discuss. Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.